Okay, thanks very much indeed. Thanks to the CLLSA for allowing me to speak today. Just a bit of background on me. I came to Birmingham in 1982 and managed one of the city centre hotels for a number of years. And my great love of cricket took me to Edgbaston, where I was marketing manager for 9 years during the heady days when Warwickshire won all their trophies in the late 80s and early 90s. And I'm delighted to see Eddie over there. When I was training in the hotel business, he was a sous chef at the Dorchester Hotel in the 60s. So we've kept together a lot of these conferences and shared CLL. I was diagnosed with CLL 11 years ago. I saw a locum doctor who basically told me that I got chronic lymphocytic leukemia and that they'd see me again in 6 months' time. That was about it. I still go to the same hospital. I went home absolutely shattered. I said to my wife, I've got chronic lymphocytic leukemia, but I've been given no information whatsoever. I don't know what it is. And so I said, I'm not happy with this. So I phoned up the hospital on the same afternoon, spoke to one of the secretaries, and she says, can you come in tomorrow? So I said, yes, I can. And one of the consultants spent an hour with me talking about CLL, apologising for no information being given by this locum doctor, who I haven't seen since, fortunately. And that I'd be on watch and wait. He then handed me over to a clinical nurse specialist who gave me loads of information about the hospital, the consultants, CLL, and even the CLLSA was mentioned on it. So going back 11 years ago, that was good. My prognosis at the time wasn't that great. My wife Rita and I decided to go on some holidays, and we were fortunate enough to get insurance for this. I think it's we all worry about that, but and also I had regular blood tests. They were all at the hospital. After about 5 years, they said, would you like to go and see your GP for your next one? I said, no, I'd like to stay here. Well, that's what happened. And they said, well, I said, my GP doesn't know anything about CLL. So I've been very, very lucky. Over 11 years, I've gone to the same hospital, more or less seen the same consultant, and had blood tests at 3, 4 and 6 monthly intervals, depending how the particular consultant felt. It took me about probably 2 years to establish that if you want to see a specific consultant, you can actually ask. I don't know how many of you know that, but you can actually go there and say, I'd like to see Dr. So-and-so. So I did see Dr. So-and-so because I got on really well with him, and he looked after me. I attended these CLLSA events from quite an early stage, and I'm delighted that this is the first one in Birmingham. It's about time, and we're pleased to have you here. I found the patient stories the most interesting part. I thought Paul Moss this morning was absolutely fantastic because he did it in plain English as far as I'm concerned, whereas some of the consultants in the past have been a bit complex, certainly for me. And I found these patient stories interesting, so I thought, well, now's my time to tell mine. Over the 11 years, my platelets gradually reduced to the magic 100, which they consider for treatment. In August last year, when I was feeling pretty tired, I never got night sweats. They kept going on, do you get night sweats? I said, no, I wake up hot, but I don't get night sweats. So they couldn't understand why I didn't get night sweats, but I didn't. So in August 6 last year, I discussed with my consultant having some treatment because he said in about 3 or 4 months' time, you're probably going to feel pretty ill. And at that time, it probably would have been FCR as the treatment that I would have been given. Because I've been to lots of these meetings, read up a lot about CLL, I said, I don't want chemotherapy. But he said, that's the NHS gold standard. So I said, well, but he said, if you wait till October, there's a new trial coming out which doesn't have chemotherapy drugs. So I was beginning to particularly feel pretty tired at this stage. And so I said, yes, I'll go for the trial. So come October, I went on the FLARE trial, which is what you've heard about this morning. It's controlled from the University of Leeds, and it's very tightly controlled. And there's 4 different types of treatment you can have. Excuse me if I refer to them because I can never remember them all. You're either randomised for FCR, ibrutinib on its own, ibrutinib with rituximab, and ibrutinib combined with venetoclax. So they're the 4. I thought, well, once I've agreed that I go on this trial, I'll get the drugs tomorrow. That doesn't happen. I had to wait a month. Month? I asked one of the research nurses. I'm very lucky at our hospital. There's 5 research nurses and there's 4 clinical nurse specialists. So I have a research nurse who's allocated to me. So what happened before the actual drugs? I'd have a CT scan. 13 vials of blood were taken off me, reminding me a bit of the Tony Hancock blood donor speech. Saliva test, ECG, I'm sure some of you had all these, bone marrow, and a full medical examination. After that lot, the research nurse phoned me up in the evening and said, you've been randomised for ibrutinib and venetoclax. How do you feel about that? I said, I've no idea, you know, whether these are good drugs, bad drugs or whatever. Anyway, my story's a bit up and down, so bear with me. On the 15th of November last year, I'd had my first dose of ibrutinib, and I was told categorically by the research nurse to check my temperature twice a day. I said to my wife, why do I have to keep checking my temperature? You'll learn in a minute. She kept emphasising this, and I had to have a pneumonia injection and have to have one every 5 years. I was also given a red card. This one, some of you may have seen something similar. A neutropenic sepsis alert card. So if your temperature reaches 38 degrees or more, you've got shivers or shakes, excessive bruising or whatever hospital you go in, they'll sort you out straight away. So I thought, oh, that's comforting. So anyway, I suppose the only side effect I had at that stage was a dark rash on my head. You can see it a bit this morning, it's gone a bit red and white. And this was of great interest to the consultants and the research nurses. There's about 5 of them came in to have a look at this because I don't think they'd ever seen anybody with actually a rash on their head caused by ibrutinib. I also had cramp in my legs. This was, my consultant said, oh, if I took some gin and tonic regularly, I'd be okay. But he didn't prescribe that, he prescribed me quinine tablets instead. I also have had to have a hepatitis B inoculation over 3 months, which hasn't taken, so it has to be repeated. Early December, I wasn't feeling very well at all. Went to bed feeling very flu type symptoms. And I said to my wife, I'm not feeling well. Anyway, 2 days of this, I was still not feeling well. So I thought I'd try out this system. On the 3rd day, you phone a triage nurse. They give you a direct number. So I phoned the triage nurse. This was on a Friday afternoon. By this time, the temperature was over 37, and I was feeling pretty awful. She said, can't you make an appointment to see your GP? So I said, well, I've had this for 2 days. It's Friday afternoon. The likelihood of me seeing a GP is nil. And if I do see a GP, they're going to send me to hospital. So she said, well, the haematology ward is full, but you can take your chances with A&E. This was her exact words. So I said to her, well, I'm a patient of Dr. whatever. I'm on the flare trial for CLL. I told her all the symptoms. Seemed to go out of her head. She didn't seem to make much difference, really. Anyway, we drove to the hospital. I drove very unwisely, much to my wife's annoyance. Anyway, we went into A&E. There were about 12 people waiting in reception. It's a big hospital. And showed this to the receptionist. Yes, straight through. Fantastic. I thought this car's actually it's actually working at this stage. So straight through to a nurse, who Italian nurse, was fantastic. Put me on the drip straight away and some very powerful antibiotics to try and get my temperature down. She said, you're going to become an inpatient. So I said, oh, okay. And I was feeling awful at that stage. So I ended up in a 2-week stay. After a week, the doctors kept coming round to me and saying, oh, we're discharging you tomorrow. Every time they said that, my temperature went up above 38 degrees. It's absolutely true. They couldn't wait to get rid of me. But I must say I was very well looked after in there. I had my own room, which in the NH hospital I thought was great. I had various scans as well during this. I think they scanned every part of my body, heart, lungs, everything. I was discharged just before Christmas with a suspected viral infection and atrial fibrillation. You heard that mentioned this morning. Irregular heartbeat in plain terms. I thought, oh no, I've got a problem with my heart now. It was interesting while I was in hospital, my platelet count went up to 247. And I said to my consultant, why has it gone up so high? He said, because it's fighting infection. So that was quite interesting, something I didn't know about. It soon came down to 100 once, and I was in ibrutinib. I was discharged just before Christmas, as I said, on the 23rd. On the 27th, he had me in the clinic, and he said, you're fit now. You can start ibrutinib again. I didn't feel fit, but as far as he was concerned, I was fit, so I started ibrutinib again. I forgot to mention, if you start ibrutinib, they give you this lovely glossy booklet produced by the drug company. Some of you might have seen it. So venetoclax was added in mid-January. If I show you the right booklet, this is one. So you get another booklet. Tells you all about the side effects and drink plenty of water. So I was getting a growing cocktail of drugs by this stage, and what they do with venetoclax is they gradually increase the drug in its quantity over 5 weeks. And what they're concerned about is you have kidney problems. You've probably read about 2 patients in America who died because the dosage was too high too quickly. So initially the consultant said, we're going to admit you for the venetoclax. You're staying the ward overnight for your first dose. They then decided I was medium risk, which meant that they didn't admit me. So I thought, oh, this sounds quite good. And I suppose the thing that tired me out most was they monitor you very, very closely with venetoclax. So my clinic would normally be on a Wednesday morning. So on Tuesday I had a blood test. On Wednesday morning I had a blood test. Then I took my first dose of venetoclax. Wednesday afternoon I had another blood test. So I had to wait in the hospital all that time. This hospital was about 40 minutes drive from home each way. On Thursday morning I had to go in again and have another blood test. And not only that, he got me back on the Friday morning for another blood test. So they monitor you very, very closely. And as I say, they slowly increase this dose over 5 weeks. So after 5 weeks I was on the full dose. And my research nurse was saying, Stuart, you've got to drink plenty of water. I said, I'm drinking over 2 litres a day. She said, it's not good enough. You've got to drink 3. Now 3 litres of liquid is a lot of liquid. And I couldn't judge it at all. So I actually measured it out to see that I was taking, again, they were concerned with damage to my kidneys, which is why I had all these blood tests. I mentioned I got the atrial fibrillation. So I had to go see a cardiologist. I've seen all the experts. And he referred me to cardioversion. Well, I never heard of that. Basically, it's a procedure where they kickstart your heart. So they give you an electric shock, and that's supposed to put your heart back into balance. So I went in as a day patient. There was 8 of us. This was in another hospital, but in the same NHS group. She said, oh, your cardioversion seems to have worked all right. And then this is the nurse specialist. She's looking at the graph. She said, no, it isn't. It's reverted to atrial fibrillation. And you're going to have to be admitted. So I said, oh, great. So then the consultant came along and said, you're going to be fitted with a pacemaker. I thought, pacemaker? At this stage I was still taking ibrutinib and venetoclax. You heard Paul Moss say, stop taking it, 7 days. Well, how do you do that when they're telling you you're going to have the pacemaker fitted today and you're still taking the drugs? The cardio people didn't know anything about ibrutinib or venetoclax. I said, well, speak to my doctor at the hospital and he'll tell you all about it. Anyway, I stopped it on my own accord. I thought, well, you know, this is going to cause problems, and it did. They couldn't, I've got the pacemaker here and it kept bleeding all the time. So instead of being in and out of hospital in 24 hours, I was in there for 5 days. My consultant calls these things excitements. Every time I have something go wrong, he calls them excitements. He's a great consultant. So things have been moving along a bit. I can't taste things. Ibrutinib and venetoclax ruin your taste buds. I like curries, I like pickled onions, I like Branston pickle. Anything that's got a sharp taste I can taste. Any normal food, and my wife's great at eating it, cooking it I should say, as well as eating it, I can't taste. You know, it's just your taste buds. I mean, I quite like chocolate milk. I found that I can taste that. But ordinary milk, ew. And water, terrible. So I've lost about 1.5 stone in weight, which I suppose is to be expected. I don't really want to lose any more. I don't mind 1.5 stone because I was too heavy anyway. I went yesterday to the hospital. I always go on a Wednesday, and my consultant said, I'm very happy with you from a CLL point of view. He always says that. I'm very happy. And I said, okay, fine. So I said, what happens next? He said, after 9 months, and I've been 6 months. So they do everything in weeks. So I'm on week 25. Week 39, which will probably be in the end of August, I'll have a CT scan and a bone marrow. And if I'm okay, I'll be able to come off the drugs. And he said, I've got some good news for you. So I said, oh, what's that then? You're actually in remission, he said. I said, oh, great. So he gave me the blood test form. My lymphocytes are actually minus. Amazing. My blood cells 4.65. So I said, does that mean I stop the drugs now? No, you've got to wait another 3 months. So that was good. That was news I wasn't expecting. So I had a lot of bad news, but that was great. Lastly, the hospital and the staff, I can't reiterate enough, the NHS are fantastic. I mean, how they work in my hospital, I don't know. I go there every Wednesday, nearly every Wednesday. I'm a friend of everybody now, they all know me. They have 6 consultants on. They just worked off their feet. I mean, I saw my consultant at 2 o'clock yesterday, my appointment's for 11:45. And he just hadn't had any lunch or anything. I mean, how they do it, I don't know. They are fantastic people. My research nurse is great. If I have blood tests at another hospital, which is nearer to where I live, she phones me up and tells me the results. So I can't thank them enough. And my wife, Rita, has been fantastic. Thanks for listening, and very good luck with your CLL journey. Thank you.